I'll say that, I went from kind of getting really serious about multifamily, that 4 unit, to retired in 5 years and did play a lot in that smaller space. So I completely agree with you. You've got to work the inertia and move along, make that momentum happen in order to grow to a spot that makes sense.
At what point did you start thinking about some kind of exit strategy, right? You're like sitting there going, you know what, I can't see myself doing this for the next whatever X years. What was going on at the time? And then how did you start thinking about real estate?
So actually, I was 19 years old on a porch in college in Macon, Georgia, as a matter of fact, that a friend was telling me that her dad bought the house that we were standing on the porch of, and that she rented the rooms out to our friends. And I thought, and you get to keep that money. That is the best idea I've ever heard, right? So that's when the seed was planted to, must be real estate investor. But I didn't get really serious about it until my son was born in 2016. So the month before my son was born, I bought a fourplex to be his college fund, basically thinking I'll pay it off in 15 years, put a new loan on it, and that'll be his dollars for school. And you know what? I didn't die after I did that 4 unit, even though I was so friggin' scared of it. And I had $1,000 cash flow almost. So once I kind of realized it's this is the path I want to go down. The minute I figured out exactly how much money I'd need in order to leave my job, in that instance, it took me, call it 12 months to be able to hit that number to leave.
It's interesting. This exercise is so powerful because it makes it real, right? People always like, oh, I want to quit my job. I want to be financially free. But what exactly does that mean? Not in the figurative, whatever, metaphysical way, but actually literally like financial. And I've also seen people do the opposite, where they're fixated on a dollar amount and their motivation is super, super weak. But in this particular case, your motivation is super strong, but having a specific figure makes it real, because you can kind of work backwards from there. You already had a quad producing $1,000 a month. You're doing some quick math. I need X amount of dollars. I need like 4 of these, 5 of these, right?
Exactly. Well, I one thing I say a lot is the more truth you put to any problem, the easier it is to solve that problem. Right. So if you just put the truth to it, to how many dollars do I need, and understanding fully that there's different levels of financial freedom. Like if I can pay my mortgage from my personal residence and feed my kid, there's a level of freedom there. Really replacing my income, that's another level of freedom. Belonging to a jet membership that I one day intend to belong to, that's another level of freedom. If I'm only thinking about the jet when I'm, not bringing in anything, that's too big a leap. You got to, next right step yourself into what it is that you're doing.
So I love that you talk about the different levels of financial freedom, Mandy. I think that's so powerful, because I don't think everybody thinks that way. I think they're like, well, I'm financially free, and whatever that meaning is to them, that's what it is. So I'm just curious, going into that a little bit, what does that mean for you?
There's a woman who's part of a group that I've helped form, Aspiring Women Achieving More, that kind of helped me crystallize this, that killing it means a bazillion different things. If your choice in life is that I want to own 2 short-term rentals and then live off the $1,500 they throw off a month, you are free by definition. Whatever your definition of killing it is, and you get more out of that, out of life, you are doing it. For me personally, I know what I need to run my house and do the type of travel I want to do and have the impact on people's lives that I want to have. So for me, it was replacing, my cost of living plus a 25% buffer. I made a little calculator out of that it's just a math problem, guys. The more truth you put to it, the easier it is to address.
Yeah. So you got into this quad, right? And you're like, I need a few of these. The problem at one point becomes, financing, getting the money for it. Not so much from the lender per se, but, the equity. And, you have some money, and that's great. But then at one point you run out of money. How did you, in your mind, reconcile, hey, this is a great way. I can do another 4 of these, 5 of these. And you're like, at one point I'm going to run out of money. How did you kind of convince yourself that this was still a viable strategy?
I've kind of played in the small multi-space, the 4 to 50 unit, for the bulk of my investing time. I kind of came up with a bunch of guys who did syndications first, and I totally could have done syndications first, but I wanted that floor of my own stuff because maybe I'm, too control freak, but you're right. You run out of money at some point. But if you start in the 5 to 20-ish space, then commercial lending, they look 95% of the deal, 5% at you. And I was able to, for the first, call it 3, 4, 5 acquisitions, just leverage equity in other properties in order to take those down. Then when I went into like the 50 unit space, I took on partners in joint venture structures.
It makes common sense to start small and start small somewhere. And then there's the other people who say, look, you can skip the small stuff and just get right into syndication. You obviously went one way. Now, having done it, having both and looking at it in the rearview mirror, what do you advise people would do or should do? Should they go through and do a whole bunch of little small ones and then start getting up? Or would you maybe change a few things?
You know what? I think that there are a bazillion ways to skin a cat. And whatever feels authentic, you can swing for the fences and get there, right? But for me, I'm a single mom, right? I wanted a floor underneath me of smaller stuff, and I was lucky to have a bunch of capital of my own to get started with. That's not for everybody. If it's for you that you want to run straight at a 200 unit property, run straight at it, because it's one transaction is one transaction. One word of caution, though, is the middle size stuff, like kind of this black hole of multifamily stuff. Easy to do a 4 unit and smaller. And once you can borrow $1 million or more and get that really good Fannie Freddie lending, it gets good again. The terms get good again, but there's this black hole in the middle. And you guys, I took my eyes off a 6 unit for like 3 months. And I have a drug dealer because nobody's paying attention to it because it's too small for them and it's too small for me to be paying attention to. So understand that you really got to have your eyes on the small stuff. It is in many ways easier to go larger.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a little counterintuitive. I had the same thing. I had a relatively small 12 unit and one tenant. Almost screwed up the entire deal. A single tenant. It was unbelievable. If you have a 150 unit, one tenant, it's going to be a blip on the radar. We had another relatively small deal where we had some kind of gas leak somewhere, right? And it cost us like $23,000 to fix it. Which in like a 25 unit is catastrophic. It wipes out cash flow for like 6 months. Versus in a 150 unit, it's like, oh, it's just another rounding error. Therefore, these little incidents, these emergencies that happen are just much more pronounced in a smaller deals. The challenge always is, people's comfort zone ends at a certain unit size. This is the problem. This is the only reason people do smaller deals. Everybody goes, oh, Michael, I know I'd do 100,000 unit if I could, but your comfort zone ends somewhere around there. And so the only way someone can get in there is by doing the smaller deals. It's a reality of things. So the question always becomes, how can you expand your mindset? Because it's really a mindset issue if you think about it, right? How can you expand your mindset past the 4 or 5 or 6 unit to get to those bigger ones without spending years grinding your teeth on the smaller stuff?
Well, I'll say that, I went from kind of getting really serious about multifamily, that 4 unit, to retired in 5 years and did play a lot in that smaller space. So I completely agree with you. You've got to work the inertia and move along, make that momentum happen in order to grow to a spot that makes sense.